for Austin Community College Digital Fundamentals class, I built a Scarab Beetle Robot Project Kit. I bought it at Fry's for $40. This is the Scarab Beetle put together. This is the Scarab Beetle in action. It goes forward till it hits a wall, then it turns in a direction you specified by the jumpers on the back. Here's the circuit diagram. Here's me putting it together. I'm going to break this presentation here into putting the chassis together, then soldering everything on the circuit board, then troubleshooting some problems I ran into, and then configuring the direction it goes after it hits a wall. Putting the chassis together. Here's the box. Here are all the pieces. Here are the instructions. This is what the chassis looks like. So I'm going to fly through a lot of these slides. I have quite a few. Here are the motors and the pinion gears. Here's the chassis base. Now we're putting the chassis together. There are the motor and the motor holders. Now we're putting together the gears and the gear shafts. So here are all the gears. And now all the gears and gear shafts are on there. Here you can see the wheels on the top left and the legs in the bottom left. You have the option of going for either one. The legs weren't cast very well, the screws weren't going in, so I opted for the wheels. Now soldering everything on the circuit board. There's my soldering iron. This is the top of the circuit board. Here's the first jumper wire installed. This is the bottom of the circuit board. You can see the soldering points on those jumper wires. Here all the jumper wires are on there. Here I've added the resistors. Here I've added ceramic capacitors. Here I've added the electrolytic capacitors, those cylinders at the top in EC1 and EC3 for example, and then these half cylinders with the flat sides are the transistors. Here the diodes have been installed, like in D2 in the bottom left and D8 in the bottom right. Here the IC chips have been installed, the LEDs have been installed on the right, and then the on and off switches on the left there, the far left, and the battery housing is that white box in the bottom left. Here I've added the battery holder. This is the down board. It gets added in front of the circuit board, a little bit lower. Those black rods sticking out are called tact switches. Those get depressed when the Scarab Beetle hits the wall. That's how it knows it's hit a wall. Here the wires have been added to the motors, the yellow and green and blue and orange wires. Here are the quote-unquote antennas of the Scarab Beetle. They get installed on the front on those tact switches, so they hit the wall first. Ran into a couple problems. The first time I hooked up the Scarab Beetle, the motors weren't working and it started smoking a little bit. I went to the tutoring center and they helped me out. Turns out I had soldered two sets of points together. So the circuitry was all messed up. I had to scrape off a lot of extra solder. I had also installed a bunch of the IC chips in backwards. The notches you could see painted on the circuit board on the right side of this IC chip weren't originally lined up with the notches on the IC chips themselves on the right there. By the time I fixed that, I had actually pulled out these motor connectors. You could see the male points that are stuck in the yellow and orange wires here. So I had to pull them out and then put them back in these M circles here. Also, that was all working and the motors were running now, but when the Scarab Beetle hit a wall, it wasn't turning in any direction. That's because the downboard wasn't wasn't connected to the main circuit board, and the signal wasn't going through that it was actually hitting the wall. That's because that double connector pin right in the middle here was soldered too high. It wasn't actually touching the downboard. So I fixed that, and in the process I burned my finger on my soldering iron. Very smooth. This is now how you configure the Scarab Beetle. So now that it's finished, you can see in the back there, here's a close-up. You have ABCD and ABCD on the left and the right. This is for two movements. Mostly I focused on one movement. Here are the instructions, and it says how to configure those jumpers for the different directions. So here's the left turn. Now it turns left right there. There's another left turn. And here it's going to turn right after it hits the wall. There's the right turn. You have options to do all kinds of other turns, like 360-degree turns and stuff, but I found it to be pretty wonky. Sometimes it would go like 270 instead of 360. But the left and right turns worked exactly as they should. So that's my Scarab Beetle project. I hope you found it interesting or helpful.